We're gonna just jump into it right now. I'm not gonna play any music. We're just gonna jump into it right now because that was way too weird.
Scared.
That was way too
Good
weird.
golly.
Pastor Tim just started humming Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and you all went off on a little tangent. This is the final episode of The Well, everybody. Welcome.
Welcome.
I'm so glad you're here. I told our podcast crew here that if we're gonna do a finale, I get to ask the questions and I get to make the treat. So, welcome to this final episode, an all Mr. Rogers episode.
What?
Oh
no!
I knew nothing. I just started actually singing that as a mic test.
So,
Oh, Mr. Rogers.
Stop.
Oh.
No.
I have some.
Oh my
I'm gonna invite you to put these on if you would like.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Okay, so I apologize.
You called somebody.
Yes, this is Megan's. It's small on
Okay. Okay.
So I don't know if that's gonna work.
That's
but
what. Okay, this is funny because this was missing.
She literally just brought it to the church yesterday.
Betty goes, "Are you wearing a suit coat today?"
I don't even want to tell you why I looked for it this morning.
Were you looking to wear it today?
No.
All right.
Oh my goodness.
So now that we are,
We all had blue cardigans.
I'm sorry I couldn't get red cardigans. I contacted all of y'all's significant others.
Oh my gosh, no way. Stop that. You
I
did?
am gonna lose it.
No way. I can't believe Matt could keep that a secret.
To have them to ask if we could bring in some cardigans for this episode. So now that you're appropriately dressed, welcome to our episode.
That is really weird that I started singing.
That was bizarre.
I had no idea.
We have so much like back and forth, just random talk when we do podcasts, and to talk about Mr. Rogers without knowing any. Okay.
And I would not have known my sweater was missing because I don't even think of sweaters this time of year.
No, right.
I'm not
That was the
particular.
hope.
I'm not particular about anything, but this cardigan sits in the front spot of the right side of my closet, so I noticed it wasn't there this morning. But I didn't think anything of it. I was like, I wonder if like it needs to be washed or I don't know.
Well, you know what? It does.
Yeah.
So like I said, usually Mel asks the questions or brings the questions to us.
Yes.
But because this is an all Mr. Rogers episode of The Well, I have some very specific questions that I'm going to bring to you today.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
But we'll talk with Mel later in the episode. And let's just jump into the first question.
Perfect.
All right. Mr. Rogers often talked about the importance of listening. How can we become better listeners in our own lives? And if you want to tie that into our faith discussions as well.
Sure.
I grew up, I think I might have said this in a sermon before, but I grew up with my mom saying, you have two ears and one mouth. And then, in various comments after that phrase of, follow suit or whatever, that type of thing. And I think that's been really helpful as a mindset. I'll be honest for myself. I tend to have to be very conscious of that mindset. I tend to like, I don't know if I necessarily have a personal desire to be like heard or be right, but I love talking. And so I have to be pretty conscious of listening. So that's been helpful in that sense of it's just an easy reminder, like almost a lens to use, like, okay, you have two ears, one mouth, follow suit. Yeah, and as far as Mr. Rogers goes, I think one of my favorite. I'm still dealing with shock that this is happening, so
Right.
I'm talking around it a little bit. But one of my favorite Mr. Rogers stories was the way he introduced one of his characters. Was after people of color were kicked out of a pool. I believe, and I know we all know the story. I believe it was in a town near where Mr. Rogers lived, or something like that. But it was something that he like very much so knew about. And it was like the next show. He said, "Oh, it's really hot outside, and we have our friend here from the neighborhood, and let's dip our feet in the pool." And he intentionally brought in. It was the police officer.
The police officer,
Right.
yeah.
And he was black,
Yeah.
and I just believe that was so intentional, and he showed in that moment how to listen to somebody that was different than him. And like, yeah, we can talk about the action and all that, and that's important, but he had to listen first and see beyond himself in that listening to do that. And that, I don't know, I just find that really, really inspiring and like based in love, which is what we're supposed to do through Christ, right? So, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was amazing.
I would even say that action itself was a form of listening,
Yeah.
right? I mean, almost if you think about Jesus washing the disciples' feet as a form of listening, right? Jesus talks a lot, but like there's parts where he doesn't, and that's one of them, right? And even when Peter tries to engage him, just like, relax, take a seat.
Yeah.
I think that, our culture really encourages talking. I mean, I think that from the time we're little, like, like talk, communicate. I always said my daughter talked really young. And I was like, oh, there's a reason that like 1.5-year-olds don't talk. You don't want to know what's going inside that brain. It's like a scary place. But in school and those kinds of things, there's a lot of pressure to talk. And I think when I started in the process of becoming a pastor, that was one of the things that people had criticism of me for, like, well, you need to talk more. I'm naturally a little bit introverted, but also just a little bit more quiet. And I prefer to sort of listen first and then talk. There was a little bit of pressure of like, if you're a leader, you need to talk first, and listen later and stuff. And I really felt strongly about representing in the church the power of listening, and that as an authority figure or as a leader or anything like that, we can also lead through listening. And I knows I talk too much too, but I try to remind myself that it even if you are in a place where you are expected to be the one leading things, and that it's still so important to represent how important it is to listen.
This is actually one of my, if not my biggest, one of my biggest weaknesses. I've read some things that might be associated with my ADHD type stuff, but I have this habit of already knowing what somebody's going to say, and so I don't need to hear the rest, so I start talking, and it's really rude. It drives Betty insane, and I have to really pay attention to it. So, yeah, I do talk too much. I always have. I just remember driving down to Florida once, it's a 2-day drive, and on the second day, my dad said, do you ever shut up? I'm sitting between my mom and dad, and the other three are in the back. And so...
Is it a youngest child thing, too,
the
maybe?
youngest child, yeah, that could be it. So
Yeah.
it's really a weakness of mine. And there's two things I want to mention is how when Mr. Rogers had that little boy who was in the wheelchair, and the way he gave the conversation to him was just a thing of beauty. And that always just holds right in my heart. And the other part is, of all the stories I think of, the most dialogue that I know of, besides the farewell address that Jesus gives in John, is
lengthy.
Very lengthy.
Really went for it there.
Like 8 chapters of lengthy. No, it's not that long. But
It seems like it sometimes.
Oh, man.
The woman at the well.
Yeah.
And who does most of the talking? She does. She really talks a lot, and he listens to her. And so that's an area where I need to improve.
interesting. Speaking of wanting to talk more, it was when you were talking about like the the pressures of like talking, and it just, I'm going to name it, folks, especially in the church. It's
Amen.
a thing in church leadership. It's a pressure that people working in the church are under all the time, to like be a certain way. And like in my experience in youth ministry, I don't want to say it's heightened because I don't want to take away from y'all's experience, but it's definitely real, right?
Yeah.
I do more talking when I was a youth pastor,
right? And
really.
and that pressure for that, and I saw it was originally posted as like a funny meme, but it ended up like getting some serious roots. I saw it the other day, and it said, "For once, I just want to see an article that says, dear extroverts, here's some way to take some peace and calm,' or dear extroverts, here's some way to shut your mouth," or like, like that type. And I started thinking about like all of our articles, all of our like self-help in that way is like, introverts, here's a way to act at a party, or like, those types of things. But like, where I don't want to get too binary with introverts and extroverts, but also like, where are we learning from each other of the gifts of listening? And like, I'm going to name it for the three of us. You have a more natural gift for listening than we do, right? Like, I think everybody in the office would agree, right? Like, we know that.
Right.
But like, if you would go to like these other things, like this meme I said, like, it would be like, dear introverts, here's how to be more outgoing, right? Like, but there's a gift, there's an art, and we just named, 3 things from Jesus and 3 things from Mr. Rogers, which seems great to name 3 for 3 with both, right? Like,
So
but like,
good.
and it was all based on action that was done from listening. Yeah.
I know we're going over, but I just want to say we just had a Synod Assembly, and one of my proudest things is in 25 years, I've only gotten up to speak at a Synod Assembly twice.
That's big.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I know some pastors who have gotten up more than twice at one assembly.
Yeah. No, and I think just to, Jay, thank you for naming that for the church, because I think that that's absolutely true. Even what we do in worship, even when we gather, there's so many words. Talk. It's from the second we start to the second we're done. Talk, sing, talk, sing, talk, pray, which is also talking, and then sing, right? There's room for listening in worship. And if we would invite people into that, I think that people could really find beautiful promise in it. So
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
yeah. If you got one last comment, go
I
ahead.
just say last week we remembered Memorial Day, and I can't tell you how many people thanked me for the moment of silence.
Sure.
Just
Just silence.
Even what the purpose was, which was important, right? But even just the moment of silence.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to our next question.
Sweet. What's it going to be? I'm so excited.
In his last moments, it is reported that Mr. Rogers, speaking of he, asked his wife if he was a sheep, referring to the Last Judgment in the Bible when Jesus separated the good sheep from the bad goats. If Fred Rogers questioned his own sheepiness, what hope do the rest of us have? Discuss.
Doug's hitting us with it.
Yeah, that's.
I was like, oh, he's starting out with like listening. That's so nice. Yeah.
I think I would say that this is just exactly that thing we talk about faith and doubt being not 2 sides, not 2 separate things, right? But 2 parts of the same thing. When there's faith, there's doubt, and when there's doubt, there's faith. It's just one of those things that humans seem to experience. And I don't know that we know why. I think that we do sort of wish we could just have faith and leave the doubt out, and could we just finally, for once and for all, believe, right? And yet it seems that in our human experience, our sort of creatureliness, that doesn't seem to be something that we're very good at doing, right? I mean, even some of the people that we look at, I mean, Mr. Rogers, of course, right? But there are stories throughout the time immemorial that even some of our wisest sages, be it in Christianity or any other kind of faith tradition, or even leadership tradition, struggle, right? So at a very core part of who we are, our most basic struggle is probably between faith and doubt, even when it could come to some things like questions of our religion, but it's also questions of like, what am I doing here? Should I, what should I do? What do I believe in? Who can I trust, right? All those really core questions of what it means to be a human and alive at this point of time are really a struggle between faith and doubt. And I think it is one of those things that we're not all the way sure why. Why can't we just leave that doubt behind? I don't know, but I wonder if it has something to do with helping us be vulnerable, right? And help, and there's
agree.
just something so holy and so indescribably evidently good about vulnerability, because we're built with it, right? God came to us as a baby, came to us in a vulnerable state. There's something that transmits holiness in vulnerability that just can't be transmitted in sort of power and authority and those kinds of things. So that would be. I don't know that I have heard that story before. It's powerful.
Yeah.
I think if I'm sure of myself, if my faith is so strong that I have no doubt, I don't really need Jesus.
Right?
Good point.
And when I hear the stories of like the sheep and goat and the wheat and chaff, especially like the wheat and chaff, we always say, oh, some people are chaff and some people are wheat. No, it's the same plant. I'm wheat and chaff. I'm sheep and goat. And the goaty part of me, the chaff part of me, finally gets set aside because there's no reason for doubt anymore. But whenever I've gone, I call them doubt storms. Whenever I fall into a doubt storm, when I come out, I am so much more secure in understanding of faith than maybe prior. What led me up to doubt storm? Normally it's, and it's not normally something cataclysmic. It's normally the dullness of every day, where I start going, what's going on here? And I think when I read those stories about some being thrown in fire and some being, the wheat and chaff, the sheep and goat, I'm thinking that is kind of like the purifying of fire, that part of me that doesn't listen, that part of me that does these things, that is taken away. And I'm finally whole as created. But that's kind of how I see that.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think for whatever reason I have the three like solas going through my mind, the word alone, faith alone, grace alone.
Lutheran, such a good Lutheran.
It's a seminary.
It's almost like he's in seminary. I'm just thinking about that, like word alone, faith alone, grace alone, but we always have the three of these, even if we say alone. They're actually not alone, right? And so faith alone, but by grace alone, right? And so when you were talking about, Pastor Carey, when you were talking about vulnerability, I was thinking of some of my most vulnerable moments in my life. And I think I had caring individuals around me, but I think the only thing I had was faith, right? Like, even if I was doubting and I was vulnerable, when I look back, like, even if it was just, one particular moment that's in my mind, even if it was just faith in Steph, my wife's hand holding me, that like, I don't even know what the next hour is going to be, but I know in this minute I'm okay, right? Like, I wasn't consciously like, oh, this is faith, right? But like looking back, like, yeah, like all I had in that moment was faith. Like we're going to be okay, right? Like this hurts. We're admitting some hard things. We're not sure what the future looks like right now, but we're going to be okay. At least for this minute, right? And then we'll worry about the next one. And I just think, I don't know. I haven't heard that story either, so I think I'm pondering it a little bit. I'm reminded of, in fact, I don't know why apparently I get my wisdom from Pastor Carey today. I think you preached on it, and I just want to make sure I'm crediting you for where I got this story and not like saying I found it somewhere else. Mother Teresa, right? Did you? Okay. So many people have their relationship with religion, with spirituality, with Christ has been influenced so heavily by Mother Teresa. And she has journals filled with doubt,
Yep.
right? And doubt that she tried to hide. But yet, even in that doubt, some of the most profound things for millions of humans have
Yeah.
come from someone with deep doubts.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I want to be careful I say this, but at the same time, like, I actually find that freeing.
Yeah.
I don't know if she did, but I find it freeing, like, that we can be both and Christ is with us in both. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still pondering this question a little bit, but I really, I've been reflective this past few days, and I'm just thinking about some of the biggest moments that I've had in youth ministry with, like, trips and, like, things going down or whatever it is. It's out of that vulnerability and doubt where, like, just the deepest conversations of faith and life and connection and community have happened. And so again, I haven't heard this story, but that honestly makes me respect him even more. I think,
Well, oh my gosh, you guys, like, my God, why have you forsaken me?
Jesus
Jesus
did
calls
it.
that out on the cross.
Well,
This is Mr. Rogers dying of pancreatic cancer. Right?
Pancreatic cancer, yeah.
Crying out, my God, why have you forsaken me? And Jürgen Moltmann talks about, like, that moment on the cross being the moment when God infuses every single part of what it means to be human in creation with the presence of God.
Yes.
It is a pivotal moment in the history of this planet. And it came through a moment of what you might say is doubt, right? I mean, if Jesus is calling out for God on the cross and feeling God forsaken, what is that except doubt?
It is.
That's questioning for
And
sure.
that is where
right?
God literally enters into creation at every juncture,
Yeah,
every point.
There's another scene that I hold up from one of my favorite passages, which is Matthew 28. They gathered at the mountain with him, paraphrasing, and they worshipped him. Oh, and some doubted.
And some doubted, yeah.
They're looking right at the guy.
So the day we're recording this is a couple days before that's the lectionary text to preach on.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, that's. I have a little difficulty when someone says, "Oh, I don't doubt."
Right.
Sometimes when we think we have all the answers, it's probably when we're the furthest away from the answer, right?
Amen to that.
Oh,
Amen to that.
definitely.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh my gosh,
That's
what's
a
going to be
great
next?
question.
Ooh, if he's ramping up, we
I
need.
know. This is
I
like Hot Ones.
Yeah,
you like did some deep research here. Like, I'm impressed.
This is great.
I wish
But
the
we have
camera
donuts
could.
instead of wings, which
Right?
I'm kind of down for donuts.
I wish the camera could see Doug's, like, pure joy and smile for these, like, trick
Absolutely.
questions.
Awesome.
I just have one more left.
Oh, man.
This is our last question, and it's not even a question. It is just a quote from Mr. Rogers that I'd like you to discuss. I like you as you are. Oh, no. Children need to hear that. I don't think anybody can grow unless they are exactly as they are.
Is that from his testimony before Congress
I believe
at
so.
the
Yes, it
funding of
is.
public communications?
Yeah.
Freaking
Can you read that again?
I can. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. I like you as you are. Children need to hear that. I don't think anybody can grow unless they are exactly as they are.
Jesus took everyone as they are. He takes everyone as they are, accepts everyone as they are. God so loved the world. And we'd like to put so many buts into that. And we put a lot of buts into our children.
Yeah.
I mean, not the three of us. I mean, we as a world. I love you, but clean your room. I love you, but do the dishes. I love you, but you need to be a better student in the categories that I think you should be a better student. I like you as you are. I think that's basically the theology of Christ and the theology of the cross. and we, like all people as they are, and in who they are is where they grow. And to have the audacity to tell someone who they are isn't right, what their identity isn't right, is wrong, to me is extremely sinful. So I think that's probably one of the most profound things that he said. And if I remember correctly, he even got some of the more conservative people who didn't want to support public radio to change their minds, and to some I think were even in tears when
At
he
that
finished.
particular
At that
quote
yeah.
is my
That
is
moment.
my memory of
Right.
it.
Because how many of us, I kind of grew up with having to meet expectations from a parental figure, and it didn't feel like unconditional love. I like you as you are, and that's the only way you can grow, is really how God speaks to us, an unconditional love, that this is who you are, and that's enough.
I have so many things going through my head. When Doug started reading the quote, you might have noticed me go, "Oh no!" into the back of my seat, because I'm a fairly emotional person, anyways. But this quote really gets me. I'm gonna try to tell a quick story. There is, I don't want to say there's nothing, but there's close to nothing more close to what I think the image of heaven could be like than my daughter watching the end of a Daniel Tiger episode, which is like basically the animated modern day version of Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
And watching the end of Daniel Tiger, and oh man. So my daughter is not neurotypical, and there's just different things that may seem to the outside world as more of a struggle than people who may be neurotypical, and there's a lot of stuff that's kind of an uphill battle for her at times, and for her to watch her end an episode, and the song in the background that I love you just the way you are, and Daniel Tiger goes Ugga Mugga, which is like and I love you with a hug, and her singing along to that in her own singing voice, and just pure joy on her face. It's a earth, I guess, the earthly side view of heaven to me, of just to see, and every time I have a chance to witness it, I go, yeah, you are. And it just, I don't know, that's what came to mind, even when you were talking too, like, just that imagery, and we can take that story in many ways and put our own experiences to it, but yeah, I don't know, that's where my mind kind of got stuck. I had another thing I want to share. Hopefully it will come up. I'll pass for a second and get my composure.
Yeah, it's probably it's one of the most unlikely things we can experience, I think, as human beings, is to have someone say that to us, or have that be brought to our attention, that we are not loved in spite of who we are deep down, but because of who we are deep down. There's so much in the human development and again, pressures of culture to hide who we really are and to pretend that we're someone different. And those layers get built up and built up and built up, and to where even the person who you might think is the most successful and beautiful and all of these things is hiding who they really are, for fear of not being lovable as the true part of themselves. And I think that's it's a wonderful thing that Mr. Rogers brings to our attention, is the deepest part of ourselves, right? He talks about that a lot, and I think that his theology of that is informed a little bit by Henri Nouwen as well. And he talks about that a lot, right? God loves us into connection with the deepest parts of who we are, right? Those parts that maybe we feel like are vulnerable and aren't as beautiful as other people's might be, or maybe not as talented as we wish that they could be, or whatever, but really are the deepest nuggets of who we really are and who we were created to be. And that statement is very counterintuitive, because we're sold from the time we're born that we have to be different. We have to buy things and do things and practice things to make us different from who we really are, because who we really are isn't good enough.
Right.
And it's been pretty good for our consumer culture, but not so good for who we are raising our children to be, and our mental health and things like that. And I think that you could definitely get into some stuff with social media about who you want to be, and that you're not good enough, and all the kinds of pressures that go along with that. It's not great, but we've always had it. And the statement of, I like you who you are. I remember hearing that as a kid from Mr. Rogers, and yeah, it was hard for me to believe as a kid. What do you mean? I mean, I could always be better, right? Like, I don't make my bed as early in the mornings. I probably should. And
you make your bed? I'm just kidding.
Right, whatever it is. Because we're just, and through no fault of the authority figures that want to teach us how to be good people, right? We sometimes get the message that we're not good. And let's face it, original sin didn't do us any good in that department either. Right. Thank you, Augustine.
Yeah. Did you come up with your...
I did.
Go.
So, actually, I think I will go for you, because you might have a follow-up, because it's just something you said. So you were talking about the I love you, but, and one of the things, and I'm kind of putting myself out here a little bit, one of the things that I try to do in conversation in general, but especially with my kids, is to end with the I love you. So, like, there are things, right? Like, for your safety, like, you should stop doing blah, 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 or whatever it is. Or like, hey, like, I can't hear you when you're screaming at me. Like, we need to stop screaming. Those types of things. But instead, like, hey, you need to clean your room. I can help you, and I know this is really hard. I love you. Let's do this together. Like, that different than, like, I love you, but clean your room. Because now, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you remember the clean your room part,
right?
Not the I love you part, right?
And I think, part of our love is our community and relationships with one another, and how we value those. Like, we still have, yes, we are loved exactly for who we are, and that's the base in order to love each other, right? We love because Christ first loved us. Right. And so, yeah. I don't know. That was just something that had come to mind, like that language, or the order in which we say that, like, matters so much.
Yeah.
But
when this is kind of a confession. When Mr. Rogers came out, I was like 8 or 9, and that was a baby show.
Sure.
And we couldn't watch it, and so I would go down into our family room. We had a split-level house, and I would watch Mr. Rogers with the drapes closed, so none of my buddies would see me. And then when I got to be a junior and a senior in high school, I got in with a group of guys, and one day, we weren't behaving, but all of a sudden we had TV on, and Mr. Rogers came on, and the room went quiet. And that's when I realized we all snuck down into our basement to watch Mr. Rogers, so nobody could see us. Because he made you feel so good. And I think he was, even though he never mentioned the name of Jesus or God that I can think of in the show.
No, I think he purposely never did.
And he was a minister. Yeah. I think he did the most for proclaiming the gospel than anyone else I know who's on TV.
Yeah.
The most. He was a true preacher of the word through that show.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's that part where, or that story about when he got on the subway, right? And all of a sudden people started singing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's everybody. I mean, the subway, you can think it's a cross section of everyone, right? And everyone starts singing it. It's amazing.
Tom Hanks says, I have to do this movie.
Yeah,
Yes,
right. When
yes.
Tom Hanks says that.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
I
Totally.
I know the last episode. So can I ignore the clock for a second? Okay, cool. Mr. Rogers received, I don't remember if it was a letter or a phone call or something, from a little girl who was blind, and she was very worried about Mr. Rogers' fish because he would end the episode with feeding the fish, but she didn't know if they were getting fed or not, but she knew that he had fish. And so literally the day after, the next time he recorded, after receiving this letter, he started describing feeding the fish, and he literally did that till his very last episode. He never missed it once. He didn't ask her to change. He didn't come up with a plan for like how she needed. He adjusted so everybody knew that all were being cared for, right?
Amazing.
And like, that's so amazing.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the gospel.
Yeah, that's the gospel, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Doug, you are.
Thank you, Doug.
Wow.
Buddy.
Thank you very much. It was
Yes.
a marvelous
This is a joy.
journey.
Before we get to treat, I think we should probably say goodbye to Mel. With this being
He's
the
down in
last,
the well here. Let me dig him up. Mel, come on up,
say
buddy.
hello and say goodbye to Mel. Since this is his last time with us.
All right. Looks like he's on his way. Here he comes.
Hi, Mel.
How's it going, Mel? Good. How about
See you, buddy.
blowing some kisses?
Goodbye.
Mel,
Farewell.
Thanks for the questions.
Mel, sorry for
Well,
taking your
thanks for the
job from you.
questions.
Yeah, Mel got it taken away for the day.
We'll see you by the well sometime.
Sounds good. Sounds perfect. Thank you, Mel.
Thanks, buddy.
Bye, Mel.
All right. So the other caveat that I put along with this episode was that I was going to be able to make the treat for today.
Oh my gosh.
I was here pretty early this morning. So I made and full confession, this is not a recipe from a cookbook. However, if any of our listeners out there are putting together church cookbooks, shoot me an email, shoot me a message, or drop a comment on this video, and I am more than happy to share that recipe with you.
Nice.
And we'll get it in your church.
Let's get it in a church cookbook.
Awesome.
I have homemade donuts. They are vanilla glaze, and I have a chocolate dipped as well. So I'm gonna step away from the microphone.
Okay, y'all.
We'll just talk about how amazing
Yeah.
they look. We've had to look at them the whole time.
We've been watching
Yeah,
these
this is-
donuts the whole time.
Wait, it's Mr. Rogers and donuts.
Like, stop.
Oh, best day
Wow.
ever.
Don't tip him over. I'll weep.
Oh my
And-
gosh.
And if I just may add a personal note, Doug is also wearing a pink shirt, and I know it probably wasn't on purpose, but I'm loving it. It's a good day for JQ.
Totally.
Like one of each would be.
Which
bad, right?
which one do you like better, Doug?
Thank you.
Which one? Do you like?
I
it?
haven't tried them yet.
Oh, okay. All right.
Like,
What am I gonna start?
seriously,
I
they,
think-
I'm gonna start with
these
the
could come
vanilla.
out of a bakery. Look at these things.
They just
There.
they look
Look at that.
better than
It's just
professional.
amazing.
All right, I'm gonna try
I
this. chocolate. Oh my
I think
gosh.
we have to do both though. But I'll start with the. I always save the best, what I think is the best, for last.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, like 1 out of 5. No, terrible.
I think you should get rid of them. I'll take them off your hands.
Mm. Excellent.
I don't need a rating on these.
Oh well.
Because we all know it's 5 out of 5.
It's 5.
Oh man.
Okay, but the glaze, because
Mhm.
I love glazed donuts, but sometimes the glaze is like so, and I have a sweet tooth, but sometimes it's so sweet where you're like, I want to taste the donut. This is, seriously.
I'd say the same thing about the chocolate. Like this is really good chocolate. Like it doesn't taste like a Hershey bar. It tastes like a delicious like dark chocolate bar. It's and not too sweet. Excellent.
This is really good.
My only complaint, and that's just because I'm picky. I think I overworked the dough a little bit. It's a little chewy, but still.
I like that.
Mm. Amazing.
Mm.
Now, I mean, I like things that are chewy. I chew ice. I mean, I like that.
Right. I want to try the other one.
I like how you
'Cause I do
only
like
ate half of it to have the other one, because I'm definitely eating 2 donuts right now.
I haven't had one yet.
Yeah.
Well, as we
Oh my gosh, that was really good too.
as we wrap up here with these donuts, I want to, in your mouth's full of donuts, I want to ask, do any of you have any final thoughts or comments as we close out, not just this episode, but close out this this podcast project that we worked on together?
You know, the three
Yeah.
of us have final thoughts.
I would, if you don't.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, sure. First of all, thank you to my co-hosts. It has been an honor and a privilege and a joy from the top of my being to the bottom to do this with you. It's so much fun to have this conversation with you, and thank you for your time and your hearts, but mostly thank you for the wonderful people that you are. Thank you. And thank you to Doug for just like making this happen. Like we wouldn't be Doug. It's the reason this happened, and that's amazing. And he's done a wonderful job, and like totally like icing on the cake with this episode. Yeah, best day ever. But thank you, Doug, for your talents and your heart and your time and your attention and everything that you put into this and everything you do.
I mean, we
And
I don't
the
want to
wonderful person that you are.
I don't want to downplay it, but we literally sit here and talk.
Yeah.
I don't want to downplay it, but we do.
yeah.
Like, yeah. I
Oh yeah, and Jimmy.
and Jimmy,
And
Thank you, Jimmy.
shout
you
out
to
to
Jimmy.
Jimmy.
For great job editing and
I wish you
making
could
us
have
look
this
great.
donut.
This one's for you, Jimmy.
Jimmy, when you come back to Madison, I'll make you donuts.
Nice.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'll go last.
I want to jump on that train with Doug, because I don't think it's unintentional that he sits behind the camera, but he's making this happen and encourages us in many ways too, as we're doing this, and it has been such a life-giving piece of, and this is the last episode of the Well for Reasons, right? Like, naming some of the elephants in the room. Like, I'm 3 days out of my last day here at St. Luke's, right? And this has been the thing that has just been so life-giving in the middle of like really hard life decisions. And each of you, as co-hosts and colleagues in this journey and journey of faith, and kind of putting our thoughts out there is scary, but knowing that we're doing it together, knowing that there's even just someone here listening, just means a lot. And when you read that quote, Doug, the last question, when you read that quote, I guess I just want to repeat that back to you. We're always on the camera, but because of who you are, we're all able to think and grow and ponder in our faith. So thank you.
Absolutely.
And to each of you as we have these conversations. I would say more, but I think I'm just going to get emotional. I'm thankful for this. I've had conversations with people that are thankful for how they've thought about their faith and growing in their faith through conversations we have. But I don't want to downplay. Like, I literally go home and I'm like, whoa, what about Henry now? It's a what? Or like, wait, like, I mean, this is so life-giving, and I think it's so important that, leaders in the church are inviting each other to be vulnerable about things that they're also leaders in. And I don't take it lightly that we've opened that space up for each other. So thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you.
Brave space.
I think
brave space.
I think back a couple of years ago when we first started talking about this, and in 25 years of ministry, this has been the most growing, exciting thing that I look forward to was the Well, talking with the two of you, and then having the opportunity to have people come and talk to me about what they heard about what we said. Just the way that we set it up and the way that it was done, Doug, was marvelous. Seriously, I really mean it. This is the most excitement, the most learning I've had in 25 years of ministry, and it's been a joy talking with the two of you. And I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
for joining together on this journey. It was great. So, and I also want to thank all of you who listen.
Absolutely. Thank you, listeners.
Yeah, you are the reason we do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we talk to each other enough. Y'all make this go.
Yes.
But
yes.
yeah,
And
I'm
all the
getting
people,
clapped here. So
yeah, the people who've come up to us and, thank you, every single one of you
Yes.
who've been encouraging to us through this. It's because we do have fun, but it's also like pretty cool to remember that there are people who also have been joining us. And
exactly.
so thank you to every single one of you listeners
Yes.
Thank you.
and watchers.
Pastor Tim, do you want to close this out?
Well, we've finished talking about life, death, and everything in between.
That conversation's done.
Yeah, all done.
That's not counterintuitive to anything we said on these episodes.
Thank you for journeying with us to the well. May God bless you in all of your journeys. Amen.
God bless you.